Hey guys, welcome into this segment from our full-length The Onside Kick podcast. In order to get the full podcast, go down to the description, go to Blog Talk Radio / The Onside Kick to download the full thing. Enjoy, everybody.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
What's up, Dimmies?
And you are listening or watching The Onside Kick here on Most Valuable Podcast. If you are on YouTube, hello. It is great to see your faces again. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, or Stitcher, thank you guys for giving us the download and the listen today. Mark, we're recording a day later than we usually do. Yesterday, Memorial Day, me and you had I'll say you had the get-together. I just did the easy part and showed up. And we had a nice time on a day that we're usually spent recording. But now we're back in the recording studio ready to talk some football. And like you said, Mark, you can't wait for football season.
Right, and it's really early to have. I mean, you kind of always had that feeling.
Not even June
but
yet.
It's really early.
It's basically June.
It'll be June in 2 days. So it's really early. It's too early to have it. I posted on Twitter at the Mark Weber that all I want is my fantasy football mock drafts to really get started. Because man, I'm excited. I'm excited for fantasy football. I'm excited for real football. I'm excited for the minor league football, which is college football. There's a lot to be excited about.
Well, and we already know football season has officially begun us because the Bears finally have their first injury.
Yeah.
With Mark Sanchez going down, football season has officially begun on May 30th.
They've had quite a few already.
This is the first one. This is the one that
This one's to a quarterback. We're happy about it.
Ceremoniously dubbing it the official start of the 2017 season. But we got a jam-packed show for you guys. We're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns. We're going to look at Deshone Kizer and a little bit of Cody Kessler and kind of answer the question of will Deshone Kizer start for the Browns this year or win the job this offseason. Then we're going to look at Mark's Chicago Bears and what does Victor Cruz bring to the Bears receiving corps. And then we're going to wrap up the show talking about the New York Football Jets and Christian Hackenberg. How is he going to make strides, or what strides does he need to make in 2017 for the New York Jets? But we're going to start in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns, and Mark, the Cleveland Plain Dealer. No, that's not the new nickname for Deshone Kizer. They reported that Deshone Kizer is on the fast track to win the Browns starting job. And they say Coach Hugh Jackson called Kizer a quick study, where Kizer is quickly being pushed up to speed as quickly as possible. Cody Kessler is getting the first team reps, but it looks like the Browns have plans to have no plans to slow play Kizer. I'm going to just hit you with it. Does Deshone Kizer win this job this offseason?
It's totally possible that he wins it. I can't say 100% that I think he will, but it's Cleveland, so a lot of me wants to say, yeah, he's totally going to go out there. He's going to win it. And it's also just one of those things.
It's one of those things.
Get your T-shirts. That for Cleveland, for one of these teams that drafts a quarterback early, and I'm counting Kizer as an early quarterback because it was, early second round, it should count. Although I think it's probably more mid-second round. Anyways, these are one of those guys who easily can go out there and win that starting job when there's not much competition out there. And when you spend a pick that's fairly early, these guys get hyped up. And these coaches know, these GMs know that I spent this, this valuable pick on this guy. He's got to start. That's why we talked about Deshaun Watson, if he's going to start. That's why we've had the conversation about Trubisky. Mahomes, we're not having that conversation, obviously.
Because of Alex Smith.
And that's why now we have to have the conversation with Kizer, because these are people who there's a lot of expectations for them. And we'll get to Cody Kessler, too. Cody Kessler's unfortunate situation is he didn't get an opportunity to prove himself. So it's a 100% quarterback battle.
Well, and the thing with me is, and it was 52nd overall, was Kizer's draft position. So around that second, more towards the second half of that second round. But I look at last year, and this is a hard decision And when I saw like, oh, well, the Browns are putting him on the fast track, my first thought was, why? Why are you putting him on the fast track? Because this team, first off, this team, and I know this is not just me disparaging the Cleveland Browns and their fan base, but let's be honest, even with Cody Kessler starting, you're not going to win the division. You're not going to win the Super Bowl. You're not probably even going to make the playoffs. And I know that's me kind of shooting the Browns right out of the door and saying, no, you're not going to do anything this season before it even starts. But let's be realistic. A rookie quarterback, unless Deshone Kizer comes out and looks like Dak Prescott, which guess what, he won't, because the Browns don't have that offensive line, and the Browns don't have Ezekiel Elliott, and the Browns don't have Des Bryant, and the Browns don't have
I don't think Dak
Beasley.
Prescott really had Des Bryant either, though.
Let's be honest. Well, that's why I said Cole Beasley. Let's be honest. Dak Prescott had a lot of things around him that helped him. The Browns don't have that. The Browns have a nucleus, but they don't have what Dallas has. So we can't expect Kizer to come out and, he could be like Dak Prescott. I just look at it and I go, you're the Browns. This year, you're not going to win anything. You're going to win hopefully a few more games than one. But when I say you're not going to win anything, you're not going to go to the playoffs. You're not going to win the division. You're not winning the Super Bowl. You're not advancing in the playoffs, any of that kind of stuff. So I look at it and go, why are you fast-tracking Deshone Kizer for the starting job? Because, I mean, I look at Cody Kessler, and last year he didn't do terrible. I mean, I look at the games where the last 4 games, 3 of them he had most reps. That New England game, he only had 8 attempts in that game. But the other ones, 244 yards against Miami, lost in overtime. You had against Washington, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. They lost that game 31-20. And then at Tennessee, 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, no INTs. And overall, he had 6 touchdowns, 2 INTs. So I look at Cody Kessler and I'm like, he's a guy where in a short kind of sample size, a small one, we saw a quarterback that can take care of the football. Now, I know he had Terrell Pryor, and Terrell Pryor's not there anymore. He's now in Washington. So that is something that I think needs to be looked at. But I just look at Deshone Kizer and go, why are we fast tracking him? Because the Browns aren't going to compete this year.
Yeah. But the hard thing with it is you also don't want Kizer to kind of get lost in the shuffle. And I think that's a hard thing because you have Cody Kessler, who is a 3rd-round pick by Cleveland. Now you have this 2nd-round pick by Cleveland. And it's just kind of this mess that I keep talking about in Cleveland for the quarterback situation. There's no clear answer, which is okay. You don't need it right now. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the month where we'll start playing football. Haven't even really gotten to the month where we have real practices. So there's a lot of time here. But when we come down to it, you don't want Cody Kessler to be the guy who goes out there and does okay, but not great. And Kizer just sits there, and your team isn't good, and you're back in the top 5. And then do you draft a quarterback now? And then you've had, a 3rd rounder, 2nd rounder, and now you got a 1st rounder. You got to play your 1st rounder. So these other 2 guys are just going to do nothing. You don't want to get yourself trapped in that situation either. So I can understand why you might fast track Kizer if he's learning. I mean, they're not forcing him out there, apparently. Apparently, he's picking up the playbook pretty well. If he's learning everything, if he's doing everything he needs to do, I can get it because Cody Kessler's there. You can fall back on him if Kizer fails. It's easier in a way to put Kizer out there and see what happens. I don't think it's necessarily the smartest move, but to do it and see what happens as opposed to saying Cody Kessler won't lose his starting job if we put him out there, but he's not going to win us games either. And then Kaiser's just going to sit on the bench. Because you're really not going to have a situation where much changes between these 2 quarterbacks in my eyes. So if Kaiser's ready, yeah, get him out there.
Well, and that's the whole thing. It's if he is ready for the starting job, and let's say Kizer goes out there and he just straight wins it from Kessler. That's a different story. But when I see, then the key word is fast track. because, like you said, apparently he's picking up the playbook well. They're just moving him right along. I just get worried with that term because usually when teams like the Browns, and I'm not saying that as like, oh, look at the Browns, they suck, blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying teams like the Browns who are in a bad situation and have pressure on them to win games, sometimes you do things under pressure that forces a quarterback into a situation that he might not be ready for.
Yeah. And I think a problem for Cleveland, too, is Cleveland's been a revolving door. And
the famous jersey with all the quarterbacks.
Exactly, which got retired. You don't want to keep doing that. So you can put Kizer out there and have him not be that great and then give him a second year. You know, there's no reason why you have to draft another quarterback. That's kind of the thing with Cody Kessler of, this will be, I think, his third season now, going into his third season, where if he's going to, have this opportunity and get it taken away so quickly for another guy, that's not a pattern you want to keep going. If you're going to do something like this, you almost hope that the Cleveland Browns say, Cody Kessler is not our guy. We believe in Deshone Kizer. Here he is.
Well, and I mean, the thing that I look at and the thing that's interesting is who did the Browns bring in? They brought in the new football operations guy to be the analytical guy.
They're moneyballing.
Well, the Moneyball, or I think of in the NBA, the Sam Hinkie effect, where with Sam Hinkie, it was trust in the process. Draft picks are the most valuable thing in the world. And we kind of saw that with the Browns, with their trading, even in the draft. Oh, Houston, you want Deshaun Watson? Give us picks. We will give you this one. You give us more picks. You give us this year's pick and a second round next year. So they're
remembering when Belichick was a Cleveland Brown.
They were accumulating draft picks, and that's where I kind of get the Sam Hinkie part of it, because he was always like, pulled all these picks together. Every pick has its value. Draft picks are more valued than actual players that are in the league today. And I just wonder if that's the mindset with the Browns, then maybe that's why it's like, you know what? Let's fast track Kizer. Let's see if we can get him ready to start week 1, because we know that we're going to have draft picks next year.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Browns right now, I mean, it's interesting because in Todd McShay's way too early mock draft, I believe they were the numero uno pick in the mock draft. And of course, he uses Football Outsiders. And who did he have him go with? A quarterback in Sam Darnold.
Exactly. And it's the kind of thing where I always say teams that draft quarterbacks early continue drafting quarterbacks early. And
you've never been proven wrong yet.
Not yet. And the thing is that for a team like Cleveland's, eventually you have to stop doing it. You really do. You have to get one of these guys and say, we believe in him. Whether it was Kessler, whether it's Kizer, whether it's the guy they draft next year, eventually they have to have somebody they believe in, give them the opportunity to be successful. And it seems like Cleveland is doing that by building the rest of the team. You thought that maybe Kessler, and I was a big fan of this idea of don't draft a quarterback at all. Just let Kessler have his opportunity next year. But when you draft a guy like Kizer in the second round, to me that's saying you don't really believe in Kessler anymore. You're kind of getting this other guy because you expect him to fail, or you think he's already not good enough and you have this other guy who's going to be better. So I'm okay with them fast-tracking him because really when it comes down to it, the preseason is going to be the determination for who wins this job. And it's Cleveland. So there's nowhere to go but up. I mean, I guess they could lose they could win no games this time.
Detroit Lions it.
But there's almost nowhere to go but up.
I got this question for you.
Yeah.
Let's say the Browns do get the first overall pick, and let's say Sam Darnold has a great season and everything is lined up, Andrew Luck style, where it's like he is the number one pick. Kind of Jared Goff style, Andrew Luck style, John Elway style of...
Well, let's not put Jared Goff in the same conversation as Andrew Luck
and John Elway, where it was... They're the number one pick. We know they're going number one. Are the Browns going to take them, or are they going to trade them? I will ask you this. If that is the situation for the Cleveland Browns, and I know that there's the other factor of, well, how did Kizer do in his first year?
But they're the first overall, so they're probably not well.
So they're probably not the greatest. I will ask you this. If you are pulling the trigger Are you saying, no, we have our guy in Kizer? Let's see if we can get picks for this highly touted quarterback that, let's be honest, there are going to be teams, the 49ers, the Jets, maybe even the Vikings. There's going to be teams that need quarterbacks. If you are the Browns, do you trade that pick? Or do you say, nope, Kizer is no longer our guy, Sam Darnold's the man?
Well, if I'm the Browns, I'm going to do my due diligence and entertain offers. I want to see who's going to give me 10 first-round picks.
But at the end, when you have to pull the trigger, what are you going to do?
I'm assuming no one is going to give me my 10 first-round picks that I want, my king's ransom. So,
okay, Wayne Gretzky.
If we are going to say, if we're putting them in the same category as Andrew Luck, John Elway, these are once-in-a-generation type of quarterbacks.
I'm just saying in the sense of he's going number one. We know he will be the first one off the board. It's just the Browns or someone else is taking
What I'm saying is if he's one of these guys who we're saying without a doubt, this is one of those like once-in-a-generation type of quarterbacks, you have to go for him. If this is the Jared Goff situation, that's why I didn't want him in the conversation, where people are saying, yeah, he's the first quarterback taken. Even this year with people saying like, yeah, Deshaun Watson or Mitch Trubisky, they're the first quarterback taken, then I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead and trade it away. Assuming that Kizer did decently. Go ahead and trade it away and let's see what happens, because a good team, when you got those first round, when you have a guy who's going to be that number one talent, better than everybody else in the draft at any other position, that can be a game changer, whether it's a running back, a wide receiver, a defensive end, whatever it might be in this case. Myles Garrett, they're expecting to be one of those absolute monster game changers out there. And that was the same thing when Houston went for Jadeveon Clowney. Supposed to be one of those absolute monster game changers. And you can't pass up those either, because those have such an incredible value, higher than a quarterback with no team around him. So if it's one of those guys who are just saying, yeah, okay, by default, they're the number one quarterback, yeah, avoid that. Unless it is a 110%, this guy is going to be fucking awesome. And there's always speculation, obviously. But when we're talking about an Andrew Luck, when we're talking about a John Elway in that type of situation, the guys you mentioned, then yes, of course, you absolutely have to do it. But I like the way that the Cleveland Browns are building a team.
Well, and the thing that I kind of look at is, and this is with the Browns, and it all depends on how Cody Kessler plays, because let's be honest, the Browns could have a record that is the worst in football. But if you believe that either Cody Kessler or Deshone Kizer played well, and really it's going to be Deshone Kizer in my mind at that point, if you think he played well, he's our guy for the future, we don't need a quarterback.
Yeah.
I would think trading it would be the better option. Of course, if
you don't need a quarterback, obviously.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you believe, you know what, Kizer can be our guy. If he sucked, boom, go with Darnold. But the thing that I think will be interesting, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how high one of these position players goes, because Todd McShay in his mock draft had one of these position players go number 5, I believe, to my Vikings in Ridley, the wide receiver from Alabama. And then I look at Mel Kiper and his big board. He's got Christian Kirk, the wide receiver from Texas A&M, at 5th on his big board. He's got Calvin Ridley at 9 and then Antonio Callaway from Florida at 11. I wonder if the Browns go and say, you know what, we fast-tracked Cody Kessler, or not Cody Kessler, Deshone Kizer, pardon me, Deshone Kizer for the job. He can be our guy. Let's see if we can get some picks for this, for someone who really wants Darnold and still be in a situation to get a wide receiver. Because to me, I look at the depth chart for this Browns team and what could be, besides maybe the offensive line, but I feel like what could be the Achilles heel for Deshone Kizer if he's the starter this year is, I look at the wide receivers, and Corey Coleman, yeah, he's going to be expected to be your number one this year because that's why you drafted him 2 years ago. But Kenny Britt, I'm not really that high on. Rashad Higgins, Ricardo Lewis, Jordan Payton, Mario Alford, and I'm not even going to name the rest because I don't give a crap what their names are. They're not going to be anything of substance for this team. I just feel like it's going to be, okay, Corey Coleman's there. We need another target for Kizer to throw to.
For sure. And if you can get one of these, let's think about an Alshon Jeffrey, even though I know he was taken later. He wasn't a first-round pick. If you can get an OBJ, if you want to talk about one of these really early-round pick guys, let's talk about a guy like Calvin Johnson. If you can get one of these guys who can absolutely take your quarterback to the next level, that's the kind of stuff that the Cleveland Browns need, more so than a quarterback. Because if you can get a guy who's above average, that's a step up for Cleveland.
Well, and that's why out of the 3 wide receivers I named, Galloway, Kirk, and Ridley, I think that the one that could go the highest is Ridley, and the only reason is he's the closest to that Alshon height. He is 6'1", the other 2 are 5'11".
Yeah, you don't want that so early.
I mean, and that's the only reason why I think Callaway and Kirk won't be a top 5, probably won't be the top wide receiver. It's because they're 5'11". Ridley is right now 6'1", 188 is what he's listed at. And with the Browns, it's also going to be interesting, and I'll ask you this. If you had to make a decision, because it's all going to come down to if Kizer's the guy and you're fast-tracking him for the job, you think he's the future, what position would you upgrade first on this Browns team? A wide receiver or the running back? Would you say, no, we've got Corey Coleman, we can get a decent number 2 in the free agent market? Because last year it was Terrell Pryor was the guy, a 1,000-yard wide receiver, but only had 4 touchdowns. I mean, Corey Coleman battled with injury, 413, 3 touchdowns. He's going to, like I said, be expected to be the number 1 guy this year. Yeah. Do you say, no, we're getting a solid number 2 in the draft? Or you say, no, let's go to free agency. Let's maybe draft a guy like Saquon Barkley from Penn State and replace Crowell, who right now is the top running back in Cleveland.
Yeah, I would want to go with a wide receiver. And the big thing in my mind is going back and looking at a guy like Terrell Pryor and how he was able to elevate this offense a little bit. And there's no such thing as having too many good wide receivers. And sure, running backs are great. Running backs will help out a lot. But I think I have better luck getting a stable of running backs that can running back by committee successfully than I do of getting a mishmash of wide receivers who are all 2s and 3s. I don't want that.
And before I get to my final thoughts on this, before we move on, my final thoughts on your final thoughts, the one thing I find funny in all of this about Deshone Kizer being fast-tracked, you know who we have yet to bring up who is technically on this roster?
Who's that?
Rock the cock-a-doodle-doo.
Yeah.
He is technically on this roster, and we're looking right past him. We're saying it's either Cody Kessler or Deshone Kizer.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think that we should completely look past him, but last season he gave nobody any reason to think that he's going to be anything. But change of scenery is a big deal. He had his kind of wake-up call and, hey, if you're not good, we're getting rid of you. The NFL will spit you back out really quickly. So maybe that's the kind of thing that gets him to wake up and be successful.
Well, and the last thing I'm going to say on this is Deshone Kizer, if he starts week 1, it's going to be, I'm not going to say, oh, that's a mistake. I think that the Browns know what they're doing in that sense, and that's crazy to say because they're the Browns. But to be honest, I think they could throw Kessler or Kizer out there. It won't make a difference because, like I said, they're not going to make the playoffs with either quarterback. I think what's going to happen is that Kizer will start either beginning of the year or close to the beginning of the year. He's going to finish out the season. They're still going to be high on him no matter what the record is. And then when we get to the NFL draft, depending on where they are, we're going to be sitting there going, if they're in prime position for a quarterback, they're going to try to trade the pick to either get a defensive player or an offensive weapon, or they're going to say, hey, you know what? The quarterbacks were just out of our reach. Let's get a wide receiver. Let's get a running back to help out Deshone Kizer, the guy that we fast-tracked for this job. What are your final thoughts before we move over to your toppers?
Yeah, I really think that Cody Kessler, showed that he can be a decent quarterback, showed that he can take care of the football. But I think that Kizer is going to bring a level of excitement, and I think that's going to drive him forward. And I think he'll do enough to win the job in the preseason to where week 1, I think Kizer will be the starter. I actually think that the Cleveland Browns will stick with him, assuming he doesn't get hurt. We'll stick with him throughout the season. I don't expect anything amazing out of Kizer, but I do think that he can put up decent numbers, be a fairly average 3,000 plus, yard quarterback, maybe like a pretty average 1-to-1 ratio with touchdowns, interceptions. I don't expect him to go out there and be a completely lost rookie, and I don't expect him to go out there and just be one of those, everybody shut up, I'm a veteran, day one, type of NFL rookies. So I just expect fairly averageness. I don't expect a great season out of Cleveland, but I expect a lot of progress, and I expect to finally kind of see not necessarily the light at the end of the tunnel, but at least where we're going.
And I look at their schedule really quick. They do have kind of I'm going to call it a mosh posh of hard and easy games where it's like, yeah, you open up the season, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Indy, but then there's games like the Jets. You've got, the Lions were good last year. The Jaguars, the Chargers, the Bears. There are easy ones in there to where maybe you can get more than one win, but really when you get one win, I'm not really going to say, oh, you're going to win 5 games this year. You might win 2.
Yeah.
You might prove me wrong, but I'm going to shoot for that lower number. But if you're a Cleveland fan, if you're a football fan, let us know what you guys think down below. What do you think of the Browns fast-tracking Cody Kessler for the job? Do you think he wins it this offseason? And what do you think will happen? How will this whole season play out for the Cleveland Browns? Let us know down below in the comment section. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that segment from the onside kick. If you think the fun stops there, you're wrong, because click the video right over here. What are you thinking? Come on. Click it. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. Bye, everybody.